Hi guys, in this episode of Plum's Thought Zone, I'm gonna be sharing my thoughts on the 6th and final episode of the first and most likely final season of the Walking Dead spin-off, Tales of the Walking Dead. And I'm gonna be honest, this might be the best episode of this spin-off. Because it's definitely the most entertaining one with the least amount of issues for me. Because for me, episode 1 with Terry Crews was boring. Episode 2 was kind of fun, but it really bothered me how sci-fi it was when The Walking Dead never has really had much of sci-fi in it, so it felt like a weird genre shift for The Walking Dead, you know? Episode 3 wasn't necessarily bad, but it was just kind of bland and not really much happened. Like the Alpha backstory or whatever didn't really amount to much, so I don't know. Then episode 4 was kind of intriguing, but overall it was still kind of bland and annoying at times. Episode 5 was straight up boring with a cool-ish premise, but again, it didn't really amount to much. Whereas this one, I just had a lot of fun with it. Not only because the story is a nostalgic horror homage, but also the actors were actually really charismatic in this one. I'm not saying that some of the other actors in this season were like bad or anything, but these ones I feel like were by far the best. They were the most entertaining and the most charismatic and the most interesting. And yeah, this I think, and the biggest reason why I love this so much is because as a big horror movie fan, especially when it comes to like obscure and more smaller and unknown and underrated horror movies, this felt right, like it was made right for me. I love exactly this kind of like small scale horror movies. I don't like mainstream horror shit. It's always so annoying to me. So this one felt like very much for me, and the fact that I enjoyed the actors' performances as well, that was just an added bonus for me, and it definitely made for a pretty fun experience. Now, I obviously have my issues with it, like the Jesus statues attacking one of the main characters scene, but overall it was fine. Like I honestly wish this was like an independent like horror movie and not a script that was shoved in Tales of the Walking Dead, because I feel like it would have been a better movie, you know? Like this kind of reminds me of this really interesting horror movie that I watched quite a while ago at this point, called Astro, which featured an actor from the Walking Dead universe, Frank Delane from Fear the Walking Dead. That movie was very much like an indie horror movie, but it was really cool, and Frank Delane very much carried that movie, and it was a really interesting horror movie, and I definitely suggest you check it out, because I think it's a cool one. Or at least check out my review of it. And this one kind of reminded me of that as well, you know? But yeah, there's more particular things about the characters that I also really like the fact that the main girl, Idalia, the fact that I even remember her name, I think just speaks volumes for how entertaining this episode was. But Idalia looks a lot like an adult version of Hope from World Beyond, which was kind of cool for me. And the guy whose name I don't remember because I don't think it was ever mentioned as much, because the guy screamed Idalia's name so many times in this episode. It's kind of hard not to remember it at this point, but he had the vibe of Shane from The Walking Dead, so I also enjoyed him because of that, so that was pretty cool. Yeah, it's honestly a really cool horror homage with like typical horror cliches, and I was definitely like scared as I was watching the movie. I definitely felt like I was watching a horror movie. I was in that mind space. I was constantly on the lookout in the background for something moving or some ghostly stuff. even though there never is in horror movies. I feel like horror movies don't really employ something scary in the background stuff that much, which is surprising, honestly, when you think about it, because it's something that it should be so obvious, and yet so many horror movies just don't do it. Like, just put something in the background that, if you pay attention, is so horrifying. But don't focus on it, because that makes it more terrifying. When you don't focus on it, because by not focusing on it, you're not going to have the characters react to it. And by not having the characters react to it, it makes it scarier for us, because we are aware of that thing being there, but they're not. And yeah, we obviously had some jump scares in this episode, but honestly I feel like they were tasteful ones, and ones that I personally like, because they are exactly the kind of fears that I've had myself from jump scares. Because usually after watching a horror movie, I always feel super fucking anxious, and I regret watching the horror movie because of that a little bit. Even though at the same time it always feels satisfying when finishing a movie. I always feel anxious because I'm always worried that I'm gonna see something in the dark. I'm not even afraid that whatever monster was in the horror movie is gonna kill me or whatever. I'm just worried that I'm gonna see something in the dark that is gonna scare the shit out of me. Because I've had that kind of experience when it comes to like sleep paralysis, even though I haven't only been like sleep paralyzed maybe like once or twice, but I've had like kind of hallucinatory moments where I'm half awake and I might be seeing something in my room that is not actually there. And that's the kind of fears that I feel like this episode definitely preyed on, especially when it comes to that one scene where there was the lady ghost standing above the bed as Idalia looked at her. Like, that was pretty creepy, and I really, really liked that. But yeah, in general, the performances in this episode were all really great. I enjoyed the characters. Like, I feel like they definitely felt very three-dimensional, and I would honestly enjoy seeing more of them, but they die by the end of the episode, so we're probably not gonna see much of them. And obviously, they cannot commit fully to the supernatural stuff, so they obviously have to have excuses about why certain things are happening. And then in the by the end of the episode, you have the guy and the girl killing each other, and they have the guy screaming, "Idalia, it's you, it's not me," basically implying to us that nothing is actually happening and she's hallucinating, and they're actually fighting over the fact that she's hallucinating, and they're not actually being thrown around by a ghost or whatever, implying that Idalia probably has like some mental health issues. So I don't know, but I honestly feel like if you're gonna go with these fucking wacky concepts, at a certain point, just fucking commit to it and go all out. I feel like kind of cowering away from it is doing more harm than good. You either don't do it or commit to it fully. I feel like the half-assing of it kind of brings down the show. But yeah, really, really fun episode, honestly. Overall, I really, really enjoyed it. So now let's go through my notes, which I think there's quite a lot of. It seems to be about as much for the other ones, but it definitely felt like I wrote down more. So anyway, the first thing that I wrote down. Oh, I almost forgot. This episode is called La Dona, and the name for the episode that I have, because the name La Dona is actually pretty okay as a name for the episode. I feel like. That's why comparatively my name for the episode is kind of shit, but the name that I went with is The Things We Do, because the kind of idea of this episode is that the guilt of all the people that they have killed to get to where they are in terms of surviving, as they also kill accidentally the lady whose house they end up staying in this episode, is kind of catching up to them and causing them to hallucinate all these things. So I think the name of the episode being The Things We Do is actually a pretty good descriptor of that, you know? So, the first thing that I wrote down in my notes is she looks like adult Hope from World Beyond. And that instantly endeared her to me because I already like Hope from World Beyond a lot. So, there's that. But also, I think the actress was also pretty good. And I'm definitely curious to see other things that both of them are in, potentially some horror movies, because I think they really worked well in the horror atmosphere, you know? Um, and yeah, literally the next thing that I wrote down was I already like these two. Like right off the bat, you could feel the charisma and so much more entertainment compared to the previous two episodes. And I'm not saying that the actor for Dr. Everett or Amy or Davone were bad or anything, but these guys were so much more charismatic. Like they instantly made me like them and be interested to see where they're going. They just felt so much more charismatic. The next thing I've written down is I'm already fucking intrigued, which, like I said, it's just a sign for how good this episode is. Next thing I've written down is that's some early 2000s horror vibe. This might be the best episode. And yeah, talking about the early 2000s horror vibe, it's I think especially in connection to like the way the Spanish voice like haunting Italia is done. Because the way you can hear, like the way the sound design is done with that haunting ghostly voice talking in Spanish to Idalia feels like straight out of horror movies from like the early 2000s when I didn't understand English. So it basically sounds like how English used to sound back then to me, and it seems to be done with the same kind of like sound editing. So it really brought me back to those days when I couldn't speak English but still watch like horror movies and stuff. I really like that about it. And I've written it down even a couple of more times how much this feels like an early 2000s horror movie, you know? Next thing I've written down is they have good chemistry, which in addition to already being very charismatic, Idalia and her boyfriend, let's call him, really had genuine chemistry in this episode. They felt like two people who cared for each other and who loved each other, at least at first. I honestly really, really enjoy them. I wish they were in a better episode or in a proper episode of any other Walking Dead show, because I think they deserve far better than this shit. Next thing I've written down is I love the sound design of the whispers. It's so early 2000s. And again, that's what I was talking about. The sound design for when you have the ghost speaking to Idalia hauntingly. It's just done in such a way of how ghostly voices in horror movies were done in the early 2000s for me. It just reminds me of that so much, and I love that. This is next thing I've written is this is also shot very early 2000s like, although for this comment in particular I don't really remember a particular scene that reference it to reference for it, but I also think that it was shot very much like that. Like it reminded me of those kind of horror movies. Like I guess you could say the scene where La Dona comes out of her grave because they didn't stab her in the head. When she climbs out of that, it looks so much like when Samara crawls out of the TV in The Ring or out of the well. And boy, I'm still fucking traumatized by The Ring. So much so that by just saying that, I just felt like fear that Samara's gonna appear behind me, which is ridiculous. But that's the kind of trauma that I still have lingering in the back of my head. Next thing I've written down is just leave the house, which is something that I was repeating for so much of this episode. Like, I understand that you're surviving in the zombie apocalypse and you should use whatever resources you have. On paper, I wouldn't even disagree in staying in this house even after you accidentally killed the lady, even though that's something that's gonna haunt me as well if I was in their shoes. And I probably would never be able to actually like live in that place knowing that I was responsible for the death of that person who was innocent. Um, but yeah, at the same time, just fucking leave the house. If it's starting to cause you so many issues and fights between you when you didn't actually fight at all before getting to this house, then why are you staying? Just leave and take your chances with the zombies. And the next thing I've written down is she's not there. And I don't understand what I wrote that a reference to. Is it when she actually starts attacking them and when she is she's standing around in the hallways and she keeps appearing or whatever? I don't know. Clearly the ending part of the episode was most likely in Idalia's head and she was just losing her mind and her boyfriend just couldn't control her or whatever. It definitely left that impression, and I kind of like how it was portrayed with that, with him screaming at her to stop, even though like shit was happening around them both, like crazy shit and stuff flying off of everywhere. I think it was actually really cool. But yeah, overall, I think it was actually a really fun horror, early 2000s horror homage, and I enjoyed it. I definitely enjoyed it. It's the one episode that I don't regret watching, and I feel like it was worth my time, even if it was a flawed thing, because there's no reason why this is part of the Walking Dead universe. It would probably have been better if it was not part of the Walking Dead universe. But yeah, I actually enjoyed this one quite a lot, and I've seen people not really liking it, at least most likely because it was the final episodes of the season, so at that point all of the issues that people have had with the season of Tales is just kind of overflowing at this point, so they just throw everything on this final episode. But I think it's probably the most entertaining of the bunch, with the best actors, the most charismatic actors, and everything. It's not a flawless episode by any means, but it's actually pretty entertaining, and I definitely really enjoyed it quite a lot. Which is why I'm going to give it an 8.7 out of 10. And that is honestly in terms of entertainment in particular, because I feel like the writing, it's not necessarily particularly strong, because I feel like it's filled with cliches and stuff we've seen before and everything, but I think the execution in this one is actually a little bit more interesting and fun and impactful than for some of the other ones. But again, it doesn't really need to be a Walking Dead episode, so Tales of the Walking Dead episode, I mean, so it's still kind of a necessary creation anyway. But yeah, I am curious though, what do you guys think about this episode after hearing what I think about it? Because I'm really curious whether I've changed your mind or not. So comment your thoughts down below, let's have a discussion about this. And also, before in this video, I just want to give a huge shout out to my currently 9 patrons on Patreon. Omar Bridgman, Deadpool, Corby Dead, Hotshot Ninja, Edzap123, Soap93160, Tia Rose Gelatly, Casey McNatt, and Alex C0520. Thank you guys for your support, I really appreciate it. It really means a lot to me. If you have decided to support me, if you've continued to support me such a long time, hope you continue to enjoy my content and continue to support me going forward. Thank you very much. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please leave a like, subscribe. Also, check out the description to my Wattpad where I post my stories, because in addition to doing all these videos on my channel, I'm also a writer. And if you don't enjoy my stories or simply enjoy my videos, you can head over to my Patreon or to my Ko-fi account, where you can pledge support and help keep the channel going, help support me so I keep writing the stories you enjoy. But if you don't want to do it, that's completely fine. You can still help me out in other ways, like liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and especially sharing this video with somebody who you think might enjoy it. And I think that's pretty much it for this video, so hopefully I'm gonna see you in the next one. Bye!